We recently got this lovely old lamp, but there's something missing. I've blinded myself countless times with it, so it's time to build a lampshade. I'm planning on making the frame out of some of these dowels, and I was going to use some of the leftover fabric from my kimono, but it's all in ribbons, so that's out. The only other fabric I've got at the moment is curtain fabric, which is really nice, but since it's made for curtains, it blocks pretty much all of the light, so that's out too. After digging around in my cupboard, I found some paper, which I have enough of, and it lets the light through. Using some measurements of the paper, I could do some quick maths to figure out roughly how big this thing was going to be, and from what I could tell, it was going to be about perfect. I've only just got enough of the nice paper to cover the lampshade, so for the time being, I'll just use some regular printer paper to make a bit of a template, which I can use to measure out some dowel for the top and bottom hexagons, and then it's onto the hacksaw. Thankfully, before I lost a finger, I discovered that I can actually use my table. With those bits cut, I could turn my attention to joining them together. My first thought was to join them like this with a nail in the end, but I'm actually going to do it like this instead, and you'll see why in a moment. To do that, each bit of dowel needed to be angled, so I clamped up a bit of a jig to help me file down the ends of all 12 rods on both sides. Then it was on to drilling, which also utilized a fun clamp setup. The holes needed to be perpendicular to the angled face, so I aligned that with the table so I could use it as a frame of reference. This project had a lot of repetitive tasks like this, but I actually don't mind them. There are enough repetitions that I can get into a bit of a flow, but not so many that I get completely sick of it. I find it pretty relaxing. Now that all the holes are drilled, it's time to reveal my master plan for holding this all together, which is to use some wire that I've extracted from some twist ties. The wire goes through 2 dowels, and when you twist the ends together, it cinches the joint shut. Just be careful when you're pushing on the wire though, because I can't recommend doing this. After a bit of fiddling and some reinforcing glue, I had my top and bottom hexagons sorted, and now I just needed to connect them, which I can do using the twisted ends of the wire from the last step. Back at the hacksaw, I cut out 3 more bits of rod, and when I was drilling all the holes last time, the most time-consuming part was clamping and unclamping all the dowels, so I figured, why not clamp the drill? This way I don't have to change the clamps at all, and it actually worked surprisingly well. With the holes done, I tried fitting it together. Ooh, maybe I need a slightly bigger hole. I might have taken this to the extreme, but do you even need a drill? It turns out not really. After straightening the wire, the newly enlarged holes fit perfectly, so I got myself a calming cup of tea and went for the glue up. It all went smoothly except for the very last joint, which took ages. Oh shit. But I got there in the end. With the frame complete, I can turn my attention to the mounting bracket, which gets clamped between these 2 sections on the lamp. My plan here is to use some more dowels and the lid of some tinned tomatoes. The dowels could get a hole in one end, so they too can slip over the twisted wires on the frame, and the other end gets a slit cut into it for attaching to the tin lid. The lid needs a hole in the center, which I'll do with this stepped drill bit. And luckily, this battered old protractor is the same size as the lid, so I can use it to mark the center. I drilled a little pilot hole, and then it was over to the step bit, which doesn't fit in the chuck. Luckily, I've got a smaller bit with a thinner shank that does fit, but unfortunately, it doesn't go wide enough, so I'll have to do something else to finish off the hole. A stepped bit in a hand drill isn't much fun, but this tin lid is a lot easier than the steel pipe I've done in the past. Channel members will know what I'm talking about since they get access to some bonus content. And a big shout out to all the members. After maxing out the step bit, I moved on to something a little more chompy to embiggen the hole. If you think this is cursed, just you wait. I marked out the shape I wanted and started chomping away some more, leaving me with this truly torturous looking device. A bit more elbow grease and some work with the file finished it up. It's far from perfect, but it's more than good enough. Time for a test fit. Ah. Oh. Hey. Fuck. Folding these tabs over gave a much more snug fit on the dowels, which let me actually assemble this thing, and with a bit of glue I could make it permanent. And just like that, the frame is done. Since I'm the one who made this, it's not exactly perfect, so the template no longer fits and each panel is slightly different. I found that I could use the shadow of the frame to transfer the shape onto the paper, which I cut out then folded to get a panel. Do that 5 more times and all the panels are done. I temporarily taped them all together to see how they'd fit, and it looked like it would work, but I was a little hesitant to move on to the next step. After another calming cup of tea and a pep talk from my girlfriend, I decided to just go for it and started gluing them together. The first 5 joints were nice and easy, and once they dried, I could close the loop. I slipped the shade over the frame, then glued the last little bits together to complete the lampshade, and now I can stare at the lamp all I want without seeing spots afterwards. This is far from a perfect lampshade, but the satisfaction of using something you've made can't be bought, and I also just think it's pretty cool. If the paper ends up being no good in the long run, I can reuse the frame to make a proper shade with some fabric, but for now I think it's great. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.